now, where Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall is standing by. He has unleashed rather heavily against Mr. Mulcair, suggesting he's leaving a path of destruction for the energy sector. Premier Wall, why do you say that?
Well, because of what he said. Even what he just said there is very problematic for two reasons. Number one, when he's down there saying that Canadians, and that would mean the provinces as well, are trying to make fools of the Americans in terms of talking about our environmental record, and that's what he said. What he's not acknowledging is the fact that we have more aggressive coal-fired generation regulations than they do in the United States. What he's not recognizing is that that attack from him is not just about the federal Conservatives or the federal government. In our country, the environment is shared jurisdiction. Provinces have jurisdiction on the environment. And in many respects, it is the provinces, and we work with the federal government in this regard, that are leading with respect to the environmental issues. When he makes those attacks on our country and frankly does damage to Keystone approval, which I fundamentally believe is in the nation's interest, not just the West's interest, because of its impact on our overall GDP and its potential fiscal impact. When he makes those attacks, what he's not acknowledging is that one of the first jurisdictions to actually put a price on carbon is the province of Alberta. That Alberta, from a public standpoint and a private standpoint, are investing in CO2 mitigation with respect to oil sands. In Saskatchewan, he's attacking what we're doing, which is greenhouse gas regulations that set goals similar, identical to the United States, more aggressive actually in terms of overall reductions. He ignores or discounts what is, we think, on a per capita basis, the most significant investment on carbon. It's with respect to coal. It's our clean coal project at Boundary Dam 3 in southeast Saskatchewan. This was our message when we were in Washington. I think that Mr. Mulcair could have served the country's interests and probably been consistent with his policy in acknowledging that the provinces and the federal government, or certainly for the province's standpoint, acknowledge we need to do better, but here's the record. Here's what we've tried to do in many respects, more aggressive on the environment than in the United States of America. He could acknowledge that the problem in the United States around CO2 is not a pipeline from the oil sands, it's coal. And we're leading in terms of technological advancements in the area of coal. So the other problem, I think, with Mr. Mulcair's position, Don, if I may, is that he seems to argue on both sides. You just heard him say, oh no, we're in favor of refining and upgrading here. We're in favor of the CO2 footprint, the emissions around refining here or moving energy to the Atlantic coast, but we're not in favor of the same thing happening to the south. And on the other hand, he'll say he's not in favor of the oil sands at all, or at least the problem with Keystone is that it's moving oil sands oil. When he agrees with the New York Times op-ed that was recently encouraging the president to turn down Keystone, and he has agreed with it, that's what he's saying. So that he's opposed to the oil sands. At least that's on a de facto basis his position. He has a lot of positions on all of these things. None of them are particularly good for the country.
And you've got a lot of positions on Tom Mulcair, and I think you listed them quite extensively there, Mr. Wall. But I'm curious if you could bring me up to speed on what you think Canada should be doing better. You've made some comments that not only Thomas Mulcair going down there speaking negatively isn't helping, but certainly Canadian governments and oil companies should do a better job. What do you think our problem is in Washington explaining ourselves?
Well, on Keystone in particular, and again, there's no Saskatchewan oil in the pipeline, though it means $300 million to our treasury when the differential decreases, when we actually get that value for the people's resource, the oil that we're not getting now, and Mr. Mulcair referenced it. When Keystone happens, it's not just about the oil sands. We needed to get that message out better than we did. It's referenced actually in the State Department, and when we were in Washington, a lot of those with whom we met were surprised by the fact that up to 15% of the oil in the pipeline would be light sweet crude from the Bakken. But more to your question, Don, I do think we need to do a better job on this file in general, not just on Keystone. We need to do a better job of engaging with the United States, with our #1 trading partner, letting them know exactly what we're doing in terms of environmental investments, admit candidly that we should be and will be doing more, highlight the fact that we have more aggressive coal regulations, that oil and gas regs are coming, that provinces have greenhouse gas legislation, as we do, as most provinces do, and that they align with American interests. I don't think we've told our story very well, and I think that's been part of the problem around this particular project.
Very interesting development just recently. Your brand new Saskatchewan NDP leader, Cam Broten, is up and saying he supports the Keystone Pipeline, which is kind of at odds with Mr. Mulcair. What's your reaction to that? Did you do such a good job of convincing him to support it, he had to go along, or how do you explain it?
Well, actually, as of today, we're pretty confused because he has not, early on in his leadership, I think within hours, he said he was in favor of pipelines within the province. But we need to export, so pipelines within the province aren't particularly helpful. He's recently been unclear about Keystone and probably more consistent with Mr. Mulcair's position. He's being asked again today, I think as we speak, about what the position is. We know the NDP here did vote against a motion in our legislature not long ago, so I'm not sure that story remains true, that he is supportive of Keystone. We're waiting to hear. There's been several positions he's had, but I think we might hear clarification on that, and I hope that he supports it for the reasons we've mentioned, because I think it is important that, notwithstanding the federal government or federal parties, we take positions in the interests of our province. That's we obviously represent the interests of Saskatchewan in the legislature, notwithstanding where we sit in the legislature.
Good. All right, Premier Wall, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Don.